thank you everyone for joining us today. You have arrived at our next webinar series installment. In this next installment of SurveyCTO's webinar series, we're going to be hearing from some field data collection experts at Innovation for Poverty Action and Komaza. So it's not just members of the SurveyCTO team. We have some special guests who I will introduce, who we are very lucky to have today with us on the webinar. So thanks to you both, but I'll introduce you properly. And we often start our webinars by answering this question, which I'll just answer in brief. There are many reasons why people sometimes choose to use SurveyCTO to collect data. And today we'll be focusing on the data quality and trust aspect of this diagram, of the summary. And in so doing, we're going to be learning from our panelists how they deal with challenges of data quality. But keep in mind that even though we're speaking to experts today, you may not be an expert right now, but that's fine. That's why we have a team of support staff who are here to advise you and guide you as and when you need that help. And that's also partly why we run these webinars, to help you improve your practices. And it's great to see so many of you here today. It does show that you're very interested in improving your data quality practices. Okay, so to give you an overview of this webinar, we're going to be looking at some of the following. I'm going to give you a very quick look over SurveyCTO's main data quality features. I won't discuss these in a lot of detail. We have a lot of video and written material that helps you understand these features. Again, the purpose of this webinar is to hear from SurveyCTO experts and experts at data collection in the field. So our first presentation is one on high quality survey data. This will be delivered by Ismail Bakur of Innovations for Poverty Action. We'll learn a little bit about their approach to data quality in surveys. We'll also learn in our second presentation from another user organization, Camasta, about their approach to data quality and what that means for them in terms of accurate business intelligence from the field. We'll also learn a little bit about Camasta because they're a very interesting organization. We're joined by Dragana Marinkovic and Shadrach Monene from Camasta. And to finish off, we will have a Q&A session. So you'll be able to direct questions to myself, to Ishmael, and to Shadrach, who will be presenting. So that's our overview so far. Now, I'm going to leave the presentation just now to just talk you over some of what's important to think about in terms of data quality best practices with SurveyCTO. So one of the crucial distinctions, just to lay it out first, is the distinction between in-form controls, and some of our panelists are going to be talking about some of these, and post-collection controls, things that you can do inside a form and things that you can do once the data has been collected to help you improve data quality. So here I am still in my Chrome window, but I'm on a SurveyCTO server console. So for anybody new, on the design tab, this is where you design forms. So if you wanted to add in-form controls for data quality, you would do that inside the design. It's possible to edit a form design or to start a brand new form design. I already have the online form designer open, just to show you a couple of things. So any given field can be edited or configured at the point of creation, and there are various controls that you can add. You can make a field required, which is a basic level of assistance. You can control when a field appears by adding relevances. We can also constrain the possible responses. And we can also make it even easier to full data by providing default responses, custom appearances, which help the people on the ground collect high quality data. But not only that, not only controls with fields that you can see, you can also create invisible or hidden fields that appear in the background. Commonly, these are calculations that help with various ends and procedures that you might have. But SurveyCTO has a host of audit field types, which can record audio, which can record the timings of the survey completion, how long it took to complete a given question. You can record whether people using your form are speeding through that form that you've created. We also have some experimental features that we discussed on our last webinar. So if you did miss that, we have a recording in our video library, which you should definitely check out. Sensor statistics are another way to give you some sort of indication of the quality of the data that is being collected, whether that data was collected according to plan. So a distinction also within the one I'm trying to make is that these hidden fields don't always help you inside the form. These enable post-collection data quality control. So that's something to keep in mind. You will look at these sensor statistics only once the data is completed. You will listen to audio audit recordings only once the form has been submitted. So the work has already been done, but you can use that intelligence from using audit fields to help you improve the quality of all of the data that will be collected in future. So that's what I'll say for now about the form design aspects, about what you can do to improve data quality. I don't want to eat into some of the topics that will be covered by our panelists, so I'm going to move on just to highlight just a few other points. Okay, so back to the server console. The design tab is where people spend a lot of time because form design is an art. It takes a long time to start to design really excellent forms. The collect tab is themed around data collection. But very usefully, the monitor tab of the server console has a collection of features to help you do a better job at monitoring data once it has been collected. So this includes everything from automated quality checks, which are statistical checks for reviewing the quality of data, of individual values as part of their distribution amongst all of your form submissions. For example, this check that has been set up, we are checking to see whether the value in the age field has, or whether any given age value is, sorry, let me start again. Whether the mean is greater than 50 for this field, for the field age. But that's just one example of many statistical checks that you can run in terms of the automated quality check feature. We also have a feature called the review workflow, which is very useful. You'll get alerted as to records being flagged for submissions, and you can just click review now to start looking at those. So briefly, that looks something like this. So here you can interrogate the individual submission. You can classify it depending on your impressions of the data quality. You can make summary comments. You can also approve and reject submissions, whether you think they're good or bad submissions, based on your judgment, based on what you've been able to see here. Also, it's possible to revise values if you know what the correct answer is. So that's a very quick look at the review workflow. I'm hardly doing it justice. I'm just showing it to you just briefly so you can see that it exists. The last part of the features on the Monitor tab that will be useful to see just in brief is SurveyCTO's Data Explorer feature. The Data Explorer allows you to visualize the data that's being collected. These visualizations, once configured the first time, are updated from the constant stream of data that's being collected by your enumerators. And you can see there are a few different types of visualizations that you can design and customize. So here we have some relationship summaries where I'm trying to look at how well my enumerators are doing in terms of progress and how good their consent rate is. And you can also look at submissions on a map. Last but not least, on the export tab, it's possible to dump your data into local exports, but also to publish that data to downstream systems so that you can take advantage of quality promoting systems that you've designed outside of your data collection system, if that is how you prefer to work. So, okay, we've had a very, very quick look at SurveyCTO's data quality features. I'm going to go back to my presentation, and if anything that I've shown you was too fast, I apologize. You can ask questions later, and we'll see how we deal with those. But it may be best if we direct you to some of the existing resources on these features. We have product documentation and videos on all of these subjects. So I'm about to hand over to our first presenter. Ismail Azindu Baku is a research quality coordinator at Innovations for Poverty Action. So he deals with issues around data quality in his day-to-day job. For those of you who are not familiar, Innovations for Poverty Action is a leading research and policy organization that collects data all around the world. Last year, they made headlines because an IPA-affiliated group of researchers won the Nobel Prize for Economics for their experimental approach to alleviating global poverty. Achievements like this are built on the commitment to data quality of researchers like Ismail and the great work that organizations like IPA do. So we are very lucky to have an experienced research quality coordinator from IPA come to speak to us today. So Ismail, without further ado, could I hand over to you? I'm going to end my screen share and let you take over.
Thank you very much, Amri, for the very interesting introduction. I'm happy to be here to share my experiences and the experiences of other researchers at IPA, researchers and research support staff at IPA. As you rightly said, I'm going to present on how IPA Ghana and IPA in general, we ensure data quality using SurveyCTO. And as I said, this is going to be based on my experience and also the experience of several other people who have worked with at IPA. So to talk about my presentation content, I would first talk about defensive survey programming. And then I will talk about how we use metadata for data quality checks. Then I'll also talk about how SurveyCTO has improved our back checking using because now we use the publishing, we publish data to our back check forms. And also how we use the Data Explorer to do some checks on the server side. Okay, so to talk about defensive survey programming. This is basically considering the needs of enumerators, respondents, and analysts when creating a survey to mitigate the possibility of errors and confusion. As we all know, people collect the data and no one is perfect. So when people are on the field, they make a lot of mistakes. Basically, what we are thinking about when we create our forms is to try to reduce those mistakes as much as possible. We do this through various ways. One way is by ensuring that our questions are easy to understand, and we use a SurveyCTO hint section to include hints when necessary to make things clearer. SurveyCTO also allows for very good HTML text formatting, and we take advantage of the HTML text formatting to highlight some key things that we want people to see, or like some keywords that we know people would want to come out. For instance, if you are designing notes and consent notes, you might want to highlight some of the contact details or some few other things that you know that respondents may ask the enumerator, and he may need to like quickly go back to the consent note to pick that information out. So when you highlight them, it's easy for the enumerator to pick them out. We also create very comprehensive lists in our surveys to ensure that we reduce the use of other specified. As much as possible, we try to anticipate the choices that would be very necessary on the field and include them in our form design. Now, one good thing about SurveyCTO is also constraints. We can build in constraints in order to prevent anticipated mistakes. So on this picture, for instance, an enumerator who would have entered a value of 6,000 for a bicycle would have their value rejected. So this is an example of a hard constraint where we define a range for which we either accept the value or we don't accept the value. So if we think that a value of more than 5,000 Ghana cedis for a bicycle is not possible, then we can just build that in, and then we don't allow people to enter those values. For select multiple questions, we also build in constraints like preventing people from selecting none and one of the valid options. So in this case, for instance, if you selected that you ate apple in the last 24 hours and you also ate none, then you would get like a warning notice telling you that your selection is invalid, and it won't allow you to proceed until you change the value. Now, with constraints, sometimes there are also some values that are within or outside certain ranges that we consider as unacceptable or unexpected, but not impossible. So for instance, going back to the example of the bicycle, if someone entered a value of 2,200 Ghana cedis for a bicycle, we know that most bicycles are likely to cost less than 2,000 cedis. But we have like a few very expensive bicycles that cost over 3,000, over 4,000. But we still need to ensure that people are just not mistakenly entering 2,200 cedis instead of 220 cedis. So this is an example of a soft constraint that would pop up, warning the enumerator that the response that they put in there is unexpected. This is just to ensure that they read what they are putting in there. So if they intended to enter 220 and they entered 2,200 cedis, then they get the chance to correct this. Now, when we are also designing the forms, we include in the choices list, we try to arrange the choices in a logical order. Now, the logical order might depend on the kind of question you are using or the kind of code that you are using. So, for instance, if you are dealing with fruits, you can arrange them in alphabetical order. So it's easy for enumerators to find that information. And you notice here that in the value section, the values are not arranged in any specific order. That is because we are more interested in how they appear by label. And the good thing is that SurveyCTO doesn't require that you have to start the values from you have to put it in an ascending order or a descending order. So they appear just as you arrange them, regardless of the value section. You can also arrange your list by levels. So, for instance, on this new picture, you can see that the education level is arranged by level. So, from preschool all the way down to the university, it makes it easy for the enumerator to sift through and find the response that they are looking for. You would also notice that in both lists, we've placed none, refuse to answer, and other specified at the bottom of the list. So this is also very important for enumerators to know that they always expect none and refuse to answer at the bottom of the list. It makes it easier for them to find those responses when they're on the phone. We also use choice filters to reduce the choice list and route inapplicable options. So, for instance, you could filter your choices based on location. If someone selected that the respondent resides in District A, you only want the communities in District A to appear when they are selecting their community, and not all the communities. So we use the filters to ensure this. And then you can also use the filters to do some few other a little bit more interesting things. So, for instance, for the education, if you have a household roster for each household member, you want to know their highest level of education completed. And someone says they're 12 years old. Based on that, you can filter down the list of education levels that they get. This is just to make sure that they don't go and select university for a 12-year-old. It is likely that there is one genius who's in a university, but it's mostly not the case. We also collect additional metadata. So, for instance, as Amrik said earlier on, you can do audio audits and record snippets of the interview, and then we hire people to sit down and listen to them. And when they listen to them, they are looking for protocol violations and also looking for signs of cheating. So if someone is trying to pick the data, maybe someone is just sitting somewhere under a tree filling out the form. You can't hear any conversation, but the person has filled out the form. Then it might give you a direction on how to investigate that issue. Or someone is just not following the protocol. Someone didn't do the consent. So someone didn't ask a certain question correctly. Then you can use this to either inform some retraining or some other things. We also use the text audit fields, and the text audit fields collect data on the amount of time spent on each field. We analyze this for outliers and flag submissions that fall out of a certain range. And then from this, we can do like further investigation. And when you go to the field monitoring, you can target specific enumerators who seem to be having a lot of these violations. One interesting thing that I have enjoyed about SurveyCTO is the ability for us to publish data from one form to another one. So because of this, we are able to greatly improve the way we do our back checking. Before we have to submit, we have to have people submit their data sets, to download the data, run the randomization in Stata or something else, re-upload the data again, the preloads, for them to go to the field and do the back checking. With publishing, we can just do the calculation in the survey form, and then send the IDs and other details of the submissions that we want to fact check straight into the backend form. And it takes like 5 minutes. Once the forms are submitted, it takes like 5 minutes to publish everything into your preload data. So when the enumerators want to go to the field the next day, all they need to do is just refresh their back check forms, and they have all their assignments, and they can go to the field. This has really ensured that we have cut the time. This has helped us cut the time between surveys and back checks, which is very important when we want to be sure that we can rely on our back check responses. There are also a few other things you can do. You can, when you are doing the randomization, you can increase the odds of selecting certain submissions based on specific situations. So, for instance, if someone has a household size that's very small, you can also just toss another coin and decide if you want to include them in the back checklist or not. Yeah. Finally, I will just talk a little bit about the Data Explorer. If you know IPA well, you know IPA relies mostly on Stata for data context, but we also use the Data Explorer as an intermediate step. Sometimes when you want to view your data set very quickly, you want to see certain things very quickly, rely on the Data Explorer. So this is an example of, this is from a field monitoring form, and we want to see on each date on each date for each of the different roles, how many submissions were done. This would allow us to quickly know who we need to target and check with to ensure that people are submitting the forms. And this is much faster than downloading the data and running it through another software. Yeah. So thank you very much. Over back to
Great. Thanks, Ishmael. That was really informative. Apologies for anyone else who was struggling with the sound there, but fortunately your slides were also very clear. Just to highlight a few of my reactions. Firstly, I think the point about designing for the needs of different stakeholders in the data collection process is a thoroughly underrated point. The needs of enumerators and respondents and data analysts are not the same. There are often different approaches to form design and study design, which are quite different for these different stakeholders. So that's a really important thing, certainly in the way that you think about choice lists. Choice lists can be very long, sometimes unwieldy if you do not think through them carefully. So I think that's a really useful point as well. Also, Ishmael had mentioned very excitingly for us that at IPA Ghana, they happen to use SurveyCTO's survey dataset publishing to automatically generate random back checklists. We love the fact that you guys are using that functionality. I'm just going to briefly introduce our next presenter. We have a reasonably different and I think pleasantly varied example for you in the form of the next presentation about accurate business intelligence data from the field. We have a business intelligence associate at Komaza, Shadrach Munene, here to tell us a bit more. Komaza are a forestry social enterprise based in Kenya, and they work very closely with small-scale farmers towards sustainable, mutually beneficial forestry business practices. Komaza deploy many of SurveyCTO's features with a mind towards high-quality data from the field upon which their business depends. So yeah, without further ado, I'm very interested to learn more from our presenters from Komaza. Shadrach?
Hi, I hope everyone can hear me. This is Dragana from Komaza. Shadrach, my colleague, is also here with me. I hope everyone's doing well. So like Amrik said, Shadrach, our business intelligence associate, will take the lead in this presentation. I am also a Komaza BI staff member. I am the BI manager, and I will just briefly introduce Komaza a little bit to this group. Much like Amrik said, Komaza is a forestry business that is based in Kenya. So if you just go to slide 2. Yeah, and so what we do is we are a forestry business, and we plant trees with basically the purpose to get small-scale farmers out of poverty and also curb the wood crisis that is currently happening in Africa. So the way we do that is we have this microforestry model where we provide everything from seedlings through to extension services, processing, and access to market, and we partner with farmers who plant on their land and provide maintenance and security for the trees. So as a social business, for us, data is obviously very, very important, and data quality is very important. So we have been able to use SurveyCTO to basically both collect information about our operations and use it for basically understanding our operations better, as well as our impact out in the field. So I'm going to just give a brief overview of the presentation. We will talk about a little bit about translating the business requirements that we have here at Komaza around how our operations work into SurveyCTO workflows. So I will take an example of how Komaza enrolls farmers to become our partners and plant trees with us, and how we use SurveyCTO to help us be more effective in that and also collect data. So this is an example from 2019, last year, that I'll briefly reference. And then my colleague Shadrach will go into talking about some of the key features that have helped us achieve this translation of business requirements into data workflows. So data preloading, assignment, reassignment, and registration. And then we'll talk briefly about improving data quality through form design, and how we leverage trainings as well to make sure we collect high quality data. And so for the first topic on translating business processes to SurveyCTO, the first thing for Komaza is that our farmer enrollment or our farmer recruitment process is a multi-step process, and Shadrach will reference this later. But essentially, we needed to make sure that we start with step 1 for farmer enrollment, and every step has a set of requirements that a certain farmer or a farmer needs to pass in order to be eligible to qualify for the next step. And this is to make sure that both the farmer and Komaza are good fit for one another. So we collect data all the way throughout, and we have to identify all the steps in this operational process to be able to then translate it into SurveyCTO. And then, so that was sort of the first critical step that we had to do. The second step is figuring out, how to break down steps into survey forms. And so that is not always sort of logical. Sometimes one step is equal to one form. However, sometimes that may not be the case. So you'll have to sort of think about that and what is the best approach there. The third sort of critical thing is outlining sort of the process rules and how they apply to data. So things we had to think about is, what data is required to pass from, survey form 1 to survey form 2, equivalent to passing from step 1 to step 2. So the second thing is also what values will qualify the farmer to move from one step to the next step. And this is all of the things that we have to think about in advance before building it into the SurveyCTO workflow. As well as, what are those backend calculations that we have to implement in the forms to make sure it all works. And then the last thing that is obviously another very critical thing to think about is what are those desired data outcomes that we have. So how do we want our final data set to look like? Where is it going to be? In what format is it going to be? And how are we going to map our variables? We do use SurveyCTO publishing a lot. So we do want to think about, how do we map those variables and what do we publish versus what do we not publish, and how do we inform both our operational processes for that. and our impact. And so that is essentially how we thought about translating business process to a data workflow. And now I will hand it over to my colleague Shadrach, who will talk a little bit more in detail about the specific features that we've used to be able to achieve that. So Shadrach, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I'll take you through the next part of the presentation. My name is Shadrach, as you've heard. One of the key features that we've been able to use is data preloading. So these are tools whereby you load data from different forms and publish the data into your backend data sets within SurveyCTO environment. So we have used this feature to ensure that each case that does not qualify from one point or one step is eliminated in the next step from answers in the current step. So how to go around this is you collect data in the first form or step one, then set a calculate field in the form that you're using, and that field is usually going to determine whether this case passes or fails in the next step. After that, you publish that pass-fail criteria. Then the next design form that you're going to load, that is the second form or the third form, is going to read the same answer and eliminate cases where the farmer, where they don't qualify for the next form, or either show them if they passed. So the example we have is just a simple case where you have a user reading from a cases that is where, like the first case is passing through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and to the final stage. The second one is a case where stage 2 is fails, and then stage 3, the data doesn't show, the case doesn't show up because it failed in stage 2. So that's a simple example. I'll give you another example to show the same, a different case of pass criteria that we have been able to use. So like in our case, each farm has to meet a specific size in order to pass and be able to enroll in our Komaza programs. We basically take polygons. So in the current example that is showing, what we have is a case of a polygon. So as I was saying, each farm has to meet a specific threshold in terms of size. And if it doesn't meet that specific threshold, we always disqualify the specific case to the next stage or the next step or the form. So usually what we do is after every polygon take, we show the data collector the size of the polygon that I've taken. And if it's not possible to go to the next stage, they know immediately. And also, if it's possible for them to be able to check that, if the threshold is okay, then that allows the form to go to the next stage. So they can be able to see the case in the next step. Yeah, thank you. So the next case is more of user management. Our business set is set in a way that our data collection team works in different geographical zones, and you can possibly have one of the member staff moving from one zone to the next. And in this case, you'll have to also make sure that the cases for the next zone, which is zone A to zone B, you have to assign that staff movement. And one way we have been able to do this is creating a form that runs with the regional managers, and they can easily switch on and off the cases between one zone to the other, if a staff moves from one point to the other and report to the analysts, and be able to have the correct KPIs. So that's one of the tools that we've been able to do. We also have we usually have cases whereby like we have different teams within Komaza but working on different projects. So basically what we have here is a case whereby we are allowing a team to only access forms that they want to see. This helps us eliminate confusion and reduce any chance of wrong data entry, and no form is filled by the wrong person. And the best way to achieve this is to make sure, one, you can use SurveyCTO tools. SurveyCTO allows you to create multiple teams within one account. This is going to enable a team specifically for a specific project to be able to see forms within that specific project. You may have other cases whereby, like the team in a single project, the project has multiple sub-project in it, and you don't need everyone within that specific project to see to be able to fill every form. So in our case here, we usually have a sheet, a backend data set that usually contains a list of all forms within a specific project, and also pass criteria, which just shows who is supposed to use a specific form. So if you're not allowed to use a specific form within your project, then your login details will automatically set you up, and you cannot be able to fill data in the same. At times, you may have within the specific project time-based activities. So in this case, you can set up a calculation within the form to determine when the activity is going to be logged, and in that case, no more data is going to be received, rather than just deleting the already submitted data. So I'll take you to form design. In this feature, we usually consider making a friendly user interface, and in a form, you have to create an interface that is that can well gel with the people who are using it, and this will boost your data quality. I have a specific example of to go around this. One is doing multiple user testing. You try different designs of the same form with a group of users to see how they interact with the form, and also do field checks in and out so that you can be able to ensure that the team that is using the form will run smoothly with the form. The other way is to also optimize the number of questions appearing in a single screen so that your screen doesn't look cluttered in some way. The other way is also making sure that you create summary tables within your form for the team to be able to see what they have already entered. Yes, so we cannot end this slide by not speaking more about GIS, because it's one of the biggest tools that we usually use. So for us, geodata is very critical because it helps us determine where our farms or farmers are, the shapes, how the farms look like, and the sizes of the farms. So to work around this, we usually collect the initial GPS that is going to locate every business unit that you're partnered with, and also by the time an activity is happening in the field, we collect another silent background GPS that is going to check against the initial one, how close they are. If that is not close, we usually counter check and see if the activity happened at the right place. We also show GPS accuracy. As you know, SurveyCTO can be able to tell you how accurate your GPS is. And also, our teams are well conversant with the accuracy standards that we require for every person who is collecting data. SurveyCTO also comes with a free home utility within the form, within the settings of the application. So you can set your form in a way that it has to have a lag time before it starts taking GPS or polygon points. This will enable you to get more accuracy in cases where you don't have a good satellite network. So there is also another way to go around this. You also monitor or set the frequency at which pins are being dropped in a polygon. So in a case, you can set like 1 second as you go around the polygon, but the higher the frequency also means that you have to have more accurate shape at the expense of data cleaning up. So you may end up using different tools like data softwares like R, Stata, and Python to clean up the data a bit when you want to export it for other business use. So once the polygons are submitted in Office, you also have to QC them and see whether they fall in the right shape and tidy them up a bit to remove any other extension that you don't have. SurveyCTO also comes with a good API they can be able to download the data without actually doing the CSV or publishing the data into a form or a Google Sheet. The last piece of our presentation is more about training. As a data designer, one of the things that you can't leave behind is training your team. You have to make sure that you create user-friendly guidelines on how to use SurveyCTO, collect, that is the application, and also train the team that is creating the forms. So this goes hand in hand on how the team is going to help you collect the right data. And you have also to train the teams in advance before you start any data collection activity or any project, so that they can be able to know what they're going to deal with and the utilities within it. The other thing is also you have to maintain a constant communication with your team in the field to ensure that they have clear support if they encounter challenges, because some of the issues that you face is more about updating the forms and also lags, satellite lags, and quite a lot of things that you may end up facing in the field. And it's important you provide them with the right customer care support. So finally, you also have to ensure you give them time to give you good feedback on what you can improve, and for sure you continually learn out of things. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Shadrach. That was super interesting for me in particular. For a useful detail, perhaps for anybody thinking and looking to understand the use case that Shadrach was illustrating, is that their workflows heavily depend on SurveyCTO's server dataset publishing functionality. So server dataset publishing helps users pass data between forms. So many of the workflows that enable what Komaza do depend on the fact that forms can pass data between the server to make one form aware of data that was submitted by a previous form submission. So that was super interesting, Shadrach. Thanks a lot for that. I can't help but strongly emphasize and reinforce Shadrach's point about training. And I believe Ishmael also touched on this. The people who collect data on research projects, they are only human. They are human beings like you and I that make mistakes. And that's, well, a really important thing to keep in mind. So they need help, they need guidance, they need friendly forms to use, and they need good training. They can't succeed without that. There are lots of fancy things that software like SurveyCTO can do, but it isn't a replacement for training. So that's so crucial. Also, I really liked, Shadrach, your points about avoiding an overly busy screen. People are very tempted to include as much as possible on one screen, thinking this somehow makes things easier, but it doesn't always. That's something to keep in mind. And also, thanks for the great tips about GPS data collection. For anybody considering GPS data collection, that is extremely useful. Now, we don't have so much time left in our presentation schedule. So for those of you who do need to get going on the hour, thank you so much for attending our webinar. I'm going to post a link now in the chat, which you can use to open a SurveyCTO form to give us feedback. We'd love to know about your experience. Maybe you want to see more panels like this. We'd love to deliver those in future if that would be useful. Also, just briefly, our next webinar will be on March 25th, and we will be learning some of the basics of advanced server dataset publishing. So particularly if you are interested in achieving some of the things that Komaza have done to make a coherent business intelligence system that provides them high quality data, that's going to be a great webinar for you.